Hello and welcome to section 4 of the Introduction to the Economy of Saudi Arabia and the other GCC countries. This section is the Economic Diversification and Industrialization Part 2. Please, if you're joining us for the first time, see section 0 for the purpose, outline, and disclaimer for this presentation. My name is Eric William Wellstrand. As I mentioned in the previous section, petrochemical is one of the major diversification strategies of Saudi Arabia. Previously, they only sold crude oil. They sold most of their oil as crude oil. Now, I'm not really sure if I call petrochemicals diversification, sort of the same with refineries. For me, they're all interlinked with the oil industry. First of all, they use oil and gas as cheap feedstocks, and they're completely dependent of oil and gas to provide cheap energy. But anyhow, compared to selling it as crude oil, it is a type of diversification. So far, I guess I did large investments in this sector in the last couple of years. I also referred to what I said in the previous section, how Aramco previously spent the majority of their budget on exploration and developing of new fields, and now they're spending more and more money on, for instance, petrochemicals. Not long ago, Saudi Arabia was a net importer of petrochemicals. Today they export around 100 billion SARs as an estimate from 2011. It is up 7% year over year and is set to increase a lot in the years to come. When developing in the petrochemical industry in Saudi Arabia, the joint venture has been the chosen model. It's usually a joint venture between a Saudi Aramco and a large external or international company. I'll give you a couple of examples. We have the Saudi Aramco Total Refining and Petrochemical Company, SATORP, which is a joint venture between French Total and Saudi Aramco. They are building a large petrochemical complex in Jubail, which is finished in 2013. If you remember from the previous section, Jubail was one of the first two industrial cities together with Yanbu. The cost of this development project is $14 billion. Sadara Chemical Company is a joint venture between Dow Chemical, American company, and Aramco. It is located in Yanbu. It is to be finished in 2016 to the tune of $20 billion. Now, these are some of the largest petrochemical complexes in the world. Put it in perspective, I'm sorry using a Norwegian example here. Many Norwegians might remember the Mongstad refinery. It was very famous in Norway. Basically, it was famous for being grossly over budget and for being one of the biggest industrial complexes up to then in Norway. The total cost of Mongstad was 14 billion Norwegian kroners. And adjusted for inflation, in today's value, that will be roughly 23 billion Norwegian kroners. Now, of course, Norwegian kroner has fluctuated a little bit. I'm using the roughly historic average, and I say approximately $3 billion, which means the Sadara Chemical Company is almost 7 times as large. This refinery, or the scandal with the costs running out of control, was so big that Arve Johansen, he was the then strong man of the Norwegian state oil company, had to quit his job. My point being is that both these projects are huge. When talking about petrochemicals, there's another company you should know about, which is Saudi Basic Industry Company, better known as SABIC. It is Saudi Arabia's largest publicly traded company, and the government does own 70% of it. They have 4 main areas, which are chemicals, plastics, fertilizers, and metals. They are growing globally. It's been one of the things that are in the news a lot recently. One of their most interesting projects is a joint venture with Sinopec, where they'll develop a factory for ethylene derivatives in Tinyan. It's interesting with China because China is now the biggest purchaser of Saudi oil.